The name Brabham speaks volumes in the world of Formula One. Sir Jack Brabham, back in 1966, won the FIA Formula One World Championship as a driver in a car that he created bearing his name. That car, the BT19, with its gold and racing green livery standing out. It does still do so here in the 21st century, as son David, a 24-hour Le Mans race winner in his own right and also a champion in multiple disciplines, keeps the traditional livery alive, but this time, since March 2022, has ventured into the virtual racing world. We here at SimRacing Unlimited have a long, wonderful chat with David himself about his exploits in sim racing, his association with base performance simulators, what it means to be a Brabham Esports driver, and so much more. Even with the fact that 2023 is very much underway in the sim racing world, I'm glad to have alongside me a very warm welcome to SimRacing Unlimited, David Brabham. David, firstly, a belated Happy New Year. But it has been very, very busy for Brabham Esports, the Le Mans Virtual 24 Hours. We have seen Brabham Esports in other competitions. I think, funnily enough, I was commentating on the FTR events, 4 hours of Hockenheim, where Yannis Albert was in the Mercedes at Hockenheim, so close to the win. But firstly, how are things?
Well, first, a belated Happy New Year to you as well. Thanks for having me on the show, Alex. Look, obviously 2023's kicked off pretty quickly, hasn't it? With the Autosport show up at the NEC, where we had some of the esports guys come up on stage and have a talk to the audience. Which was, great for us to see how we've evolved from last year to this year and give the guys an opportunity to be seen, in a different area. But then, of course, at the same time, Le Mans Virtual 24 Hours was running just literally as we got on the stage. I think it just started. So good timing from that perspective. And then, of course, we're all very keen to see how the guys got on at Le Mans, and I have to say, super proud of what they achieved. To finish P8 against some of the bigger manufacturers, I thought was a stellar effort, and it's a great boost for the esports team moving forward into 2023.
Yeah, well, I mean, the first question I have, of course, the pandemic in March of 2020 really changed how we were interacting socially, not being able to get out of the homes. What was the genesis of deciding, let's bring Brabham to the esports realm? What made you sort of go with that decision, and how's the journey been so far?
Yeah, I mean, obviously you mentioned, lockdown periods, which esports seemed to just go into boom stage, didn't it? I mean, everybody was doing it. I was involved in the Legends series, racing against some great drivers, trying to get my head around racing. Well, we were in a Brabham BT44 most of the time, which was great for us because everyone's driving a Brabham, but to get your head around how to go fast in those things, but also survive the first lap was a massive learning curve, that's for sure. And it was, super frustrating in one way, but super fun. And it was great because, everyone in lockdown was getting a bit down. It wasn't a great experience for anybody. So to get on the simulator and race against your mates, people that and it kind of brought that community feel together at that point as well, because, we're all on Discord, we're all talking, and it brought us all together in a way, that made it fun and felt like you're sort of part of humanity again, instead of being locked up in your house. So that was great. And because obviously, that was my first time in that kind of world. And we've been talking about it in the past before, Brabham obviously has got all this motor racing history, and then
Yep.
we've now got Brabham Automotive, and it's like, okay, what's next? What do we need to do to take the brand into an area that perhaps there's a demographic that doesn't really know Brabham that well? So the esports seem to be a logical step for us.
Yeah,
for sure. We knew that the dip would happen after COVID because everyone kind of went back to work, but you can see that it laid the foundation to build on. And we felt that we really needed to kind of get in that space to get the brand, sort of recognized and by a demographic that perhaps, like I said, don't really know Brabham that well. And I see a lot of potential in it too. We're already now 12 months into it. We obviously work with Calvin and Mike and Ed in the background with all the different platforms, and they sort of help run the team. I communicate with the drivers from a driving perspective more than the management side. The other guys do that, which I really quite enjoy. Talking about all the issues every racing driver, it doesn't matter in your real world or the virtual world, you all seem to go through the same emotions and feelings and frustrations and so forth. So we kind of brought all the group together to openly talk about all of that, because I think it really helps that environment, and we all gain from it. Someone's got some good ideas of how they've dealt with certain situations. So I see that as quite an important part of Brabham Esports, where we bring that community together. We talk openly about our frustrations or whatever that's might be holding back our performances, and talk about them and try and implement some ideas to how to get through them. And that part I'm doing a lot, actually. Yeah.
I mean, it's always good to hear from someone who is a British Formula 3 champion, Le Mans 24-hour winner, actually explain about how difficult it is to try and survive that first lap in an esports race. I mean, especially with the legends, we had the likes of of all people, Emo Fittipaldi, who everyone thought, you can't believe this is happening. Folks, it's happening. I mean, we had Tom Coronel, Fernando Alonso, even Sebastian Vettel.
Oh, we had Mario Andretti as well.
Yes.
Yeah.
So you got two people who are in their 70s and are still, folks, no pun intended, are still getting behind the wheels of incredibly fast race cars, especially with Mario doing the two-seater IndyCar hot laps, which at his age, he's still got that presence of mind. He's still got a smile on his face. He's always got, the deep olive Italian skin with the slick back hair. It's like he's never aged. But
he certainly has an inside, that's for sure.
We're all big kids at heart, aren't we, David?
Yeah.
At the end of the day.
Yeah.
But to have Brabham Esports take part in their first participation in virtual Le Mans for the 24 hours, to get that 8th place, despite what happened in terms of the red flags, how bolstered were the team after what was a very, very difficult race for a lot of people? I mean, we all know that Max Verstappen has come out with his comments. We've had people in the community showing a lot of toxicity towards what has happened. But despite all of that, how bolstered were the team, like saying, we've been against the best in the world on the R Factor 2 platform, and we've come out with a top 10 finish?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, there were technical problems in the background. I was fortunate enough to go from the Autosport show straight to the hub, to the center in Silverstone, where Le Mans Virtual was situated, and I was blown away by what I saw. To be honest with you, I mean, the amount of effort and also the professionalism that was there, because you had Le Mans people there. Eduardo obviously was there doing running the race, which he does in the real world. There were ACO people there was obviously Fiona Miller with the PR, but you had monitors everywhere. You had people. It was literally walking into Le Mans 24-hour command center. It was just like that. So the amount of money and commitment, and they were as frustrated as anyone else when it came to these technical problems, which, as we all know, you sit and watch an esports race, someone disappears or there's some glitch somewhere, you know what I mean? It's still in the early stages, and it's a bit probably ahead of its time in terms of the technology to making it as smooth as possible. I think I think unless you've actually gone in and seen what goes on in the background, you realize the commitment and what everyone's trying to achieve. I'm not sure it's the best thing to criticize too much. Yes, it's frustrating. There's no doubt about it. If you're doing well and boom, you're out. I mean, we went from 6 to 20 something because we got spat out. Okay, we got reinstated, which was great. So yeah, I mean, aside from that, I don't think I've spent more time sitting in front of a TV watching an esports race. I mean, it was actually really exciting. It was really exciting. I can't believe I'm, probably 10 years ago, I would have been laughing at myself if I sort of said that, you know what I mean? But it was full on racing all the way through. It was exciting. And obviously it was great to see our guys at Brabham Esports, constantly in the top 10. They qualified 12th, got into the top 10 very quickly, and stayed there the whole race. So, we're talking about a fairly new team on the scene with Brabham Esports, and I think we're punching well above our weight at the moment. That is for sure, and we're getting noticed. A lot of people are talking about what we've done and how we're achieving it. Our sort of inclusion with all the drivers and the sort of mental development all the way through that as well, which, as I explained earlier, is quite an important part of what we do. So yeah, I mean, everybody was obviously exhausted afterwards. But overall super excited and super proud of themselves of reaching, a top 10 finish in the toughest race in the world out there in esports.
Yeah. I mean, I think John Heindel from Radio Le Mans coined it very, very well one particular year. It's like, as soon as you finished a 24-hour race, it's like a complete release. You are tired mentally, physically, you are emotionally drained after such an event, like you've experienced at Le Mans, having won with Peugeot back in the day. But the BT62 is another bit of interest, because that car is now I think has already joined the sim racing world in one form or another. I think the car's now on Real Racing 3. And I think it's also on some of the other sim racing platforms as well that I've seen over the last year or so. I mean, the BT62 for the people
Assetto Corsa as well.
There we go. That was it. Because there was also the virtual brick car series not too long ago.
That's right.
But how proud? How
that
proud
was during lockdown as well.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, how proud are you? Not only just to have when we were talking, I think the last time we talked at the Autosport show was when Project Brabham was really, really gaining traction with regards to bringing the name back to Le Mans. But to now see a car that is track focused, 70 examples being constructed for track only use. How proud are you to see that car in the virtual racing world, let alone seeing it in person? Because I've seen the car myself, and it is an absolute beauty in terms of aerodynamics. It's aggressive, but also the fact that you haven't skimped on the engine that's in the car as well.
Yeah, I mean, look, when we launched the BT62 in 2018, we launched it as a track-only focus car. It grabbed the attention of the public. There's no doubt about it, and it still does. Everywhere the BT62 or the BT63, which is the GT2 version, goes anywhere, it seems to be the center of attention. which is amazing when you think, we launched it in 2018, that is still the case. So it hit all the marks in terms of its shape, or in terms of obviously the performance wise when anyone gets in the car. And, you're talking about a car that weighs under a ton, 1,200 kilos of downforce, 700 horsepower, carbon brakes, the whole thing, So, that project's obviously been exciting, and then obviously to then start to see the car pop up in the virtual world is really cool, because it's when you actually saw the response from people on comments in terms of, when we launched the 62, which then evolved into a track car, race car, and a road version, because the road version looks pretty sexy too. People were saying, "Oh, you've got to do these in all these games," and of course, in the background, we're talking to companies were approaching us, say, "Hey, we'd like to get that in our game," and then you've got to go through all that process and tick all those boxes. And of course, now we're starting to see it out there in all these different platforms, which is great. It's great for Brabham as a brand, and it just keeps everything going from the past into the future.
Yeah, I mean, it's just an absolute joy to behold both the BT62 and the 63, of course, the Fanatec GT2 side of things happening in 2023, which is an exciting time for I think for you as an individual, but also for the Brabham Automotive side. David, from your experience, obviously through Formula One, Australian touring cars, Formula 3, Le Mans, sports cars, what do you look at when a prospective talent gets in touch or you look to recruit new drivers? What do you look for
in the esports world?
Because in some respects there are some traits that carry over, but there's always something different, because esports is, well, sim racing, more to the point, is at times when we'll have, like, say, the LAN events like we had with the ADAC Sim Racing Expo in Nuremberg, where I caught up with yourself in person, and of course some of the team as well. But a lot of it is done remotely, where there'll be sessions when you're all like either on different time zones, you'll be talking on Discord, and it will be sort of like, what do you look for in an esports racing driver for Brabham?
Well, that's a good question, because in the racing world, it's easy in a way to see all this talent coming through. It's not so easy in the sim world to see it. There are so many different championships out there, and there are so many different levels. It's quite easy for someone like me to kind of get lost in that world. So I rely quite heavily on the guys who've been in the esports world. So Mike Yao from Simply Race, the Zancho outfit there, Calvin, Ed, those guys. I go to them and I say, right, okay, what's happening? They said, well, I'd say in the last 6 months, we've had quite a lot of drivers approach us now who want to be part of the team. And of course, we have to then assess where are they in their development? Do they have potential to grow? Do they represent the brand well? There's certain sort of criterias, but ultimately it comes down to pace. What are they like? What's their ranking? And what's their potential? You start communicating with them. Do they listen? Do they not listen? There's lots of things that we kind of go through to determine then, okay, well, who's coming in? And then we're still quite a young team, but we're getting interest from drivers that are actually quite good, starting to go, well, how do I be part of Brabham Esports? So the level's getting up and up in the team, and of course it is still a world where people come and go very, very quickly. It's an ever-changing driver market as such. You know what I mean? So our goal is obviously I want this to be a sustainable situation on its own entity. Brabham Esports it's out there, it's competing, it's bringing in the partnerships to help that business grow, so we can start to lock down key drivers under contract and take them forward in that way. But that will happen over the course of 2023.
Yeah, I mean, from what I've seen, of course, apart from our Factor 2, the other two platforms that are of major interest to Brabham Esports are, of course, Assetto Corsa Competizione and iRacing as well. Is there a plan to possibly look into further platforms? I mean, if there's people like, say, from Race Room, or is it going to be like the core three simulations that I've just mentioned that you guys at Brabham Esports are going to be focusing on, or could that change over time?
It's certainly the main focus at the moment. Whether it changes over time, I can't really tell you at this stage, but certainly they are the core platforms. And it's interesting, you know, listening to the drivers that are really good on like iRacing. They go to R Factor, they can't get their head around it, or Assetto Corsa Competizione. You know, they are all the drivers out there are quite specialist on one kind of platform. That's where they're best at, and some of that will be down to their driving style as well. You know, because you have to adapt quite a lot between all the different platforms, and that's not always easy to do. So you do see these sort of pockets of talent, but they are associated to a particular platform.
But also, before Brabham Esports joined, you had a very, very nice little tie-in. If anyone might remember, in February of last year, the Brabham actually launched a collaboration with Base Performance Simulators, with some of the icons, such as the BT46B, which is the iconic fan car back in the day, designed by the wizard that is Mr. Gordon Murray. And then it was banned promptly after one race because it absolutely threw the competition under the bus and walked all over them.
It was never banned, actually.
Oh,
it was
right.
Never banned.
Okay.
No.
I think it was
another story. But,
yes, I think it was Bernie Eccleston decided, he was the team owner at the time, and then Bernie decided to pull the plug on the car. The BT19, of course, reflecting the current look of Brabham Esports, the racing green and the gold, back to your dad's championship, his third one. When I think, if I remember correctly, your dad is the only individual that has won a Formula One world title in his own car.
That's correct.
So it's a bit like John Surtees winning Formula One and MotoGP, and no one else has done it since. Then we also had the BT52. But yeah, I mean, you've also got a good ally at BPS, a certain Mr. Darren Turner, who's still...
Well, I have two, actually, Darren Turner and James Guess.
Yes.
Obviously, I raced with Darren many times in the past, won Le Mans with him for Aston Martin in 2000 and 2008. And James Guess, who now runs the business. He's an old mate of mine. I met him when I first came here in 1988, and we've been mates ever since. So yeah, when we kind of looked at the esports world and the opportunities, we did a collaboration with Base Simulators, as you said, 3 iconic racing liveries put onto their simulator. And I've got one here in the office, actually. I've got the BT19, which looks absolutely stunning.
matches the hoodie you're wearing.
It matches,
as well.
Yeah, exactly. Yes.
If anyone hasn't picked up on that, that was very prominent to see at the Autosport show.
Because I mean, obviously, we're doing merchandising around the 3 iconic liveries as well on Brabham Store. You know, so BT19, BT46B. And the BT52 and the BT52 sim that went off to a customer in France. That I have to say that was absolutely stunning. It just looked the business. It really did. So yeah, then that's an area of the business that we've moved into, and we'll start to push that again throughout the 2023 period. It's an exciting time. To be fair, the esports side of it is growing. We've got more and more partners approaching us, wanting to work with us, which is great. And I see a big future there. I really do. As technology gets better, the experience will get better, and we'll just continue to evolve the team and do try and be the best version of ourselves as best we can, really.
SimRacing, David, is known as a community, especially with the teams that are high profile, but there is a inner community within the team. From your perspective, when you get behind the wheel of your simulator in the office and you're talking to the drivers and you're having some fun, you sort of like saying, right, okay, anyone got an idea for a race? How much fun is it to actually learn off of the drivers that are under your stable in the esports team?
Well, to be fair, I get on the simulator, and I got on there the other day just on my own, and I hadn't been on it for a bit, and it's amazing how much you lose in terms of being able to drive it quickly and consistently, and that's why I don't have that time. What I do is I'll sit either in the office or at home, and we all jump on a call. And the guys will be on the simulator. We'll get on a Zoom call like this, and I'll be able to, or let's say Discord, and I can see what they're doing, and we're talking while they're driving. That seems to be the best way for me to work with them. If I sat in the simulator and actually tried to race with them or stuff, they would kick my butt. I mean, they would destroy me, seriously. But because I just don't spend enough time on there. Although I do still hold that. We had one of our top sim racers jump in the simulator and go around Brands Hatch in the PT62, and he still couldn't beat my time. So I can't be that bad.
Well, you know what they say, it's like riding a bike, you never lose it. It's one of those things.
You might wobble a bit for the first time, but you'll pick it up. Yeah.
Yeah, just get those tires and brakes up to temp. You'll be fine, but you might not be as quick as me. It's always one of those good things. Of course, you've got a very, very good family. I mean, your wife Lisa is so supportive of what you do, and of course,
she's
Sam,
a racer.
and she is a racer, and of course
she's a racer at heart. Yeah,
racer at heart, and of course Sam is back over in Australia now, competing full time, which must be pretty good to see that and it's not just Sam, it's Matty as well. They've both been forging their own racing careers. I still remember when Matty was running in the big old trucks that were supporting Repco supercars, well, when it was back like Virgin Australia supercars, because that championship has been through so many different name changes over the years. I think I've lost count, because if I tried to count it on my hands, I probably would have run out of fingers and thumbs by now.
Yeah, no, that's fair. That's fair. But yeah, no, it's great to see Sam and Matthew out there, third generation, continuing the legacy as such, and not because they want to continue a legacy. It's because they want to go racing. They're racers. Yeah. They're racers at heart. I'm very fortunate, obviously, as you mentioned, my wife Lisa, who grew up with racing. Her father raced, in a Cooper when my dad was at Cooper back in the 50s. They knew each other. Lisa's brother Michael was the youngest Grand Prix driver for many years, Mike Thackrell, and she raced for 4 years before she got pregnant with Sam. So, this is an example. When I was racing at Le Mans, I'd get out of the car at like 4 a.m., 5 a.m. or whatever. There's hardly anyone in the pits except for the team and one person who has literally stood there at the monitor and watched every sector time that I've done. And that was my wife. Mm-hmm. So, and she'd get out and she'd give me a hard time. She'd say, well, what happened on lap 6 on your third stint? You lost 10 seconds. What the hell were you doing? It's like, what do you mean? What are you talking about? There's traffic. I couldn't go anywhere on the straight. There's 3 cars in front of me and I'm sitting there waiting to get past them, So I had that. I just had that support all the way through my career, which was fantastic. Really was, because she understood it. She understood the commitment that you have to make as a racing driver, and your family does come second best, unfortunately, in that scenario. And you need a supportive family around you that understands that and supports it. And I was very lucky to have that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I've got one final question, David, before we wrap things up. So firstly, I want to thank you for your time. But
Sure.
out of the sims that you've driven so far, be it R Factor 2, ACC, iRacing, is there a particular track and car combination that you're kind of partial to, that you find the most enjoyable, from not from a competitive standpoint, but just by getting behind the wheel of the sim, getting in and having some fun?
Um, yeah, that's a good question. I mean, obviously we got the BT62 in the Assetto Corsa game, and that's on the base simulator that we've got, with them. So that's a kind of one we get on quite a lot. And when we do it, we're based at Vista Heritage, and when the scrambles are on, we have the simulator under the tent, and that's what we put people in. They're driving a Brabham, and it's pretty close to reality. It's not perfect, but it's pretty close. But also I like jumping in, in a Formula One car. It doesn't matter what track it is. All of a sudden your brain has to work so much faster. And I went to Selfridges because the simulators were at Selfridges.
Yeah.
And I went down there before Christmas, and this kid who was looking after the simulator, I said, "Oh, could I have a go?" So I jumped on there. And it was a Formula One car around Silverstone.
Mm-hmm.
And it was brilliant. I had a great time. And when I stopped, the kid said, "So you know how to do apexes then?" I said, "Yeah, no." And I beat the time, and I went back there I went back there a couple of weeks later, and no one had beaten the time. So that was kind of funny.
Oh, you learn how to do apexes then.
Yeah.
I wonder if
Yeah.
someone probably pulled him to one side. You realise who you've just been talking to?
Yeah, well, I knew one of the guys that came over, and then all of a sudden the conversation went on. But he kind of worked out what my history was. But yeah, it was kind of fun. I didn't say anything. I just jumped in and drove, and broke the record at the time. And he was scratching his head, going, "Well, who the hell's this bloke?"
Kind of reminds me when there's been some viral footage of a certain 1992 Formula One world champion that then went on to win an IndyCar in '93. Of course, Il Leone Nigel Mansell getting his taste behind the wheel of a sim. And I still remember, what was it that Nigel one particular year said, "If this happens, I'm shaving my mustache off," and which he did. And it's actually got a clean shaven Nigel Mansell with a tweed jacket on a simulator. And it just, and I think there was one particular time when Nigel went, "Yeah, it's not as easy as it looks." and you said about that in our conversation, David. But David, thanks a lot for your time.
Thanks. No, I mean, look, thanks. I was going to say, my simulator experience actually started well before this. Actually, it started with the Acura P2 program, where Worth Research bought a simulator from Cruden, spent like £1 million updating it, where we were developing the car, developing Michelin tires for Michelin. I mean, it was pretty high level, and that was a fantastic experience. So it's nice to get back on the simulator, you start thinking about all of that. But that's my kind of history of sim racing, really, or
Brilliant.
driving.
Yeah. Well, David, thanks a lot. We're looking forward to seeing what Brabham Esports brings to the sim racing party for 2023, and hopefully you and I at some point will be able to catch up in person, share an alcoholic beverage at a pub of some description not too far from Vista Heritage, and wishing you and the team all the very, very best of luck for 2023. Thank you very much for your time.
You too, mate. Yeah, thanks, Alex. Cheers.